transition pictures for Cleopatra. They're not terribly moving, but they are kind of interesting. She was born in 70 BC, I believe, and ascended to the throne of Egypt at the age of 18. And she ruled sometimes alone, sometimes with other people, including a 3-year-old kid at one point. I don't know what that was about. But she was very intelligent, spoke a whole bunch of languages, was very, very clever in how she dealt with people, and a great seductress. She didn't look a bit like Elizabeth Taylor, by the way, but she was a great seductress, and she managed to seduce Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. In the end, though, when Rome was about to descend on Egypt, she took herself into a chamber, a private chamber with 2 handmaidens, and she got them to administer a poison. It's always the legend that she was bitten by an asp, but actually she wasn't. They took some snake venom, put it on a needle, and pricked her arm with it. She died at the age of 39, I think, almost 40, after a very, very tumultuous life. But when I went into the pictures, there was that cave, that metaphorical cave I always see, and she was being lowered into it very, very slowly. It was almost like she'd been wrapped in a curtain or something, and it was gradually unraveling to the ground. And when it did, it just let her out gently. And I wondered whether that wasn't maybe a slow death. Maybe she died over a period of minutes as opposed to just suddenly going. And this was her gradual descent into the other side. But she eventually opened her eyes and looked around, and she had the same kind of approach to this as you would if you'd just been washed up unconscious on a deserted island. Just really unfamiliar territory and not quite understanding anything about it. Where is everybody? Here's somebody who's used to being surrounded by handmaidens and servants and courtiers and all sorts of different people. Where are they? Why am I alone in this solitary cave? And she was barefoot. I noticed this immediately. When I notice things, they are relevant somehow to the pictures, because otherwise I wouldn't even spot them. But she was barefoot, and walking on metaphorical rock was hard on her feet. She wasn't used to this kind of terrain. But she walks very, very carefully, very gingerly across the cave to where I always see that tunnel. But what was interesting about the tunnel this time was that it was shimmering like a heat haze. None of the lines were defined. And I could not understand what this was at all. And I stood staring at it for ages thinking, I don't know what that means. I have no idea. She stepped forward into the haze because she's being pulled. There is a pull with this. There is a current. And she feels drawn to go up the tunnel. Steps into the haze. And as she does so, the tunnel moves to the left, so the whole area is on a turntable of some kind. It moves to the left out of her way to be replaced by a second tunnel. Like, go up this one, not that one. Well, I was curious as to what was up the other tunnel. So I left her there and I went up the other tunnel. And at a certain point, the ground was covered with broken glass, like broken bottles. And if she had gone up there, she would have lacerated her bare feet. While that might have got rid of all her ego concerns, all the restrictions and all the things she's accumulated over the years from being queen, inevitably, it would have been a rapid discarding of all those encumbrances. But painful. And the universe obviously knew this, because when she stepped out of the haze, there was the tunnel ahead of her. And she simply climbed the hill towards the light. However, when she reached the top, where that extra caves I always see with the dome in it and stuff, where they finally cross over and ascend, there was another haze blocking that. Everything was shimmering again. And as she watched, the cave she was looking at with the dome in turned around as well. Only the dome went from light to dark. Like looking at the dark side of the moon. The light side was turned away from her. So that when she stepped out of the haze, the dome was dark. There was no way through. Utterly confused, she sat down and stared at this and didn't know what to do. What was expected of her? How was she supposed to react to this? I am queen. Why is this not straightforward? Somebody make this happen. Nothing happened. She just sits there and waits. And because she has to wait, she starts asking herself questions. What did I do? Why me? What's wrong with me that I can't just go the whole way? She became very reflective. And here was the slow process whereby her ego encumbrances were stripped away one by one. At her own hand. In the other tunnel, they would have been bled from her. In this one, she was left to her own devices to figure it out. And by the time she was done, she had laid all her egoic issues that were holding her back out in front, rendering her vulnerable and congruent with her soul. In the outside world, when we surrender, it's seen as a sign of weakness, of loss, of failure, that we didn't do well enough. It feels like we're being weak. On the spiritual side, surrender is a sign of strength, of congruence, of living in sync and in tune with the vibration of your soul. And the more we surrender, the more authentic we become, and the easier it is, apparently, for us to cross over. We may applaud power and control and wealth and status on the mortal side of things. But when mortal becomes immortal, none of that matters. And she found this out. There are no queens, there's no royalty, there's no status after we cross over. Everybody's the same. This was her discovery. Interestingly, every single time she hit on one of her encumbrances, the light of the dome moved around a little more. And the more willing she was to succumb and to yield to the process of letting go, the more of the dome shifted around to the point where she could see the whole thing. And her entry point was like a shifting cloud of misty light. She just stared at it like, that's where I go? In there? This is the end of everything I've been through? It stops here. There are no gods to meet her. None of the fictions of the superstitious minds of the age. It was just her and eternity. And she steps into the cloud. It was like when you've had a really hard day physically and you sink into a hot, scented bath. Oh, it's so pleasant. You let go of everything that's weighing you down, including status and self-importance, and wealth and titles. None of that matters. Just And in that state of being, she disappeared into the light. One with everything, not superior to it or in control of it or demanding that it behave a certain way. No, that was it. Cleopatra was just one more soul submitting to universal consciousness. It was such a gentle yet empowering moment. It's almost like she had zero power at all on the mortal side. Her true empowerment came when she let go of that and moved into the eternal and the infinite. So interesting. And that was Cleopatra. Alright, so thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. It was an unplanned video, but I'm glad I did it now. And I will see you back on Saturday with any luck. Alright, so subscribe, like, share if you would. I'd be very, very grateful. Follow me on Twitter at CashPeters. That would be nice too. Otherwise, I'll see you soon. Bye guys. Thank you.